We'll start off today with a status report on those ballots that I've been talking about every day that are still outstanding. 23,000 have been counted, and we've got 39,000 of those 63 that we've been talking about back and forth ready to be sent to counting board and finish off our count. We still expect that at some point tomorrow we should be complete with the mail ballots that we've been discussing for the past several days. The ID deadline was yesterday, so work is continuing today to prep ballots for counting on those. And just as a brief description on exactly what that's all about, there were certain voters, whether it be for provisional ballots or for mail ballots, who were required to provide an ID, and they did not, so they had until 5 o'clock tomorrow, or yesterday, to bring in that ID. So we have all of those in-house, and staff is beginning to run through those. So those ballots will be pulled and they'll be put into count for those that provided their ID. The open and outstanding cures on all of the mail ballots that have been received is available on our website, and it currently numbers 2,333. Those voters have until November 12th, which is next Thursday, to cure those ballots, and they can dial 702-455-6552 to get assistance in curing those ballots. We will continue to run 2 reports daily. So as I mentioned yesterday, before 4 o'clock, we had released a second report. Today we will do the same thing. We'll be releasing a second report, and if there's information to report tomorrow, Sunday, we will also release a second report sometime before 4 p.m. A provisional update, and I understand that you've all been provided the handout that we prepared. So I'd like quickly to go over those. So what I provided you, is there anybody who didn't get the handout who needs the handout? Okay, good. So what I have here on this sheet is a breakdown of the types of provisional ballots that my staff is currently working on to reconcile and determine which should be counted and which are ineligible to be counted. First is the have a provisional, and I think Dan also gave you some information from our website describing exactly what a have a provisional is, but basically it's someone who reported that they were registered to vote, however they were not in the voter registration system when they came in to vote. So they voted a provisional ballot, and we have to do research to see if there's something that we've done that didn't get correctly done and they should be registered, but if they're not registered, then the votes won't be eligible to be counted. We also have a same-day registration, and the acronyms are I, O, and U. The difference between those is that the same-day registration in person is somebody who showed up at an early voting or election day site, provided the Nevada ID that's required by state law, and they were registered to vote on the spot and given a ballot to vote. The same-day registration O represents the online registration, and voters were eligible to do that until October 29th, the Thursday before Election Day, to register online, which also requires Nevada ID in order to go on and vote. The SDRU is the simplest of all of them. It's an update. So as a result of changes in state law, voters can come in and on the spot during early voting or election day change their address, change their Democratic Party, and different items. So those are the 3 different types. In addition to the HAVA, and my staff is currently working. There's a fairly large group working on verifying, going through those, because the next step, and I have communicated with the Secretary of State's office, and they have confirmed that they're going to be asking us for our first report on all voters who voted in Clark County individually, whether it be early voting, election day, or through the mail, to them on Monday. And what the Secretary of State needs to do with that is compare it with the other 16 counties in the state of Nevada to make sure that we don't have any duplicates in those that we voted provisionally, or that anybody has done anything illegal by voting in 2 different counties. Once they run that review, they'll send that information back to us on anybody whose ballot shouldn't be counted, and we'll begin to, in an automated fashion, begin to roll in those provisional votes, which probably won't be any earlier than Wednesday of next week. So keep in mind, despite the mail ballot ballots that we're putting through and reading, we won't even have the capability to enter these 60,000, which not all of those will count, however, process any of those until any earlier than Wednesday of this week. So the grand total on the breakdown for those provisional ballots is there's 21,490 Democrats, 19,010 nonpartisan ballots, and 19,907 Republican provisional ballots. Okay, in the report on U.S. mail for this morning, we received 25, that's 25, ballots through the mail this morning, and then the process of being reviewed and sent to count if they are eligible. And I've already mentioned, but just to close out, the cure process for any voter in Clark County. The deadline is this Thursday, the 12th of November, and again, the hotline number for assistance on that is 702-455-6552. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you. Good morning. Two for you. On the ID deadline was yesterday. You said you're working on pulling those. Do you have a number? There were 44,000, I believe, outstanding that had an ID issue. Do you know how many were cleared?
Unfortunately, I don't know exactly how many of those records. I can tell you that we have a large group of staff that's going through those to identify them and start pulling the ballots so that those voters can be counted. I possibly might have one update for that for tomorrow, but no later than Monday.
Okay, and just to clarify the numbers that you gave us off the top, you said a total of 23,000 have been counted?
Yes.
But that's 23,000 since when?
Since we've been talking about this universe of ballots and that 63,292.
In the 63,000. Okay.
So of those 63, 23,000, it's 23,489.
Got it. And then 39,000 left.
That is correct.
Perfect.
Pretty closely adds up to 63.
And then just confirming one last thing on these, on the SDRs. So you'll send that first report Monday.
That's what we've been instructed.
And then when you get them back on Wednesday, the number, whatever the Secretary of State tells you are eligible, how long do you think it will take you to process those?
It is an automated process, but it depends on what time in the day we get them on Wednesday, but we should be able to roll them into the system if we receive it in the morning. Otherwise, it would be on Thursday, which is our last day statutorily to get all the ballots in.
Good morning, Mr. Gloria. I have a couple of questions.
Good morning.
One on, will you be open Saturday and Sunday for curing for people who?
Yes, sir. The hotline is open. The number that I advertised, 702-455-6552.
I want to ask about security. There was another protest last night, and others are planned, we understand. Have you heard or experienced any credible threats to your facilities or the count process?
And that's a security issue, and it's more a question for law enforcement to respond to, not that I know of.
Can I ask how you feel?
Fantastic.
Would that be a feeling of relief?
I don't think it's a feeling of relief. We're continuing to roll through. We're very proud of the work that we've done and the dedication from staff. We feel good because we're continuing to report. The work has not stopped despite everything that's going on around us. So we've got a brave set of workers who've been coming to work despite what's going on around us, but that is because law enforcement and our county management has done an excellent job of putting the protection in place for all of us to feel safe, coming to work and doing what we need to do. Over here.
Morning, Mr. Gloria. You're an experienced professional. Could you explain to us why almost 100% of the late ballots across the battleground states went for Joe Biden? Have you ever seen a situation like this during the prior elections? Thank you so much.
I'm not really qualified to answer that. You need to talk to some journalists from CBS and CNN and all that kind of thing. I don't get into the details of why ballots shift or why counts shift. We count ballots as they come in, so we don't analyze why it would shift one way or the other.
Hi, Joe. Good morning. Can you break down the timeline of when those mail-in ballots that were walked up and dropped off in person actually first started being counted, the election day ones?
So the election day drop-offs, your question is, just to make sure that I understand it, when did we start putting them through the process, correct? I believe those started going in through the Agilis machine sometime on Thursday afternoon, but no later than Friday morning.
What was the delay there because we needed to get the computers that were used on election day, the update that you had described on Wednesday started?
That was certainly important. I think I've mentioned in my previous conference that it's really important that we get the database updated with those laptops that were in the system so that we can have the computer do the important work of kicking those ballots out for anybody who voted in person. They shouldn't have sent that ballot in, but we have to make sure that we don't get those ballots in the system to be counted. So yes, that would have been one reason, but we were still able to read them in, and those ballots were posted and in queue until we got all the data in. Over here.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for
morning.
taking all of our questions. I'm going to move away from the speaker. I just have two quick questions for you. First, in this sort of second half of the count, going towards November 12th, November 16th, I was just wondering, how does it feel in terms of how it's going now versus earlier in this week? What have you guys learned in this process?
Well, in terms of how it feels, I think consistently through, we've been doing everything we can to keep the process going. I can't nail anything down that specifically slowed us down. I think it's very important that everybody understands mail for the entire voting group here. We became a mail ballot county in March of this year. And so there's a lot of expectation from people around the country and also from the media that we be as good at processing mail ballots as Colorado, Oregon, or Washington, who've been doing it for 12 or 13 years. We simply don't have the equipment, the facilities, the staff that have been trained in that area to keep up with the pace that they can put up where they normally deal with mail ballots. But we've done a very good job of accommodating that. We got equipment with help from the federal government, from the Secretary of State, who's been very supportive in everything that we do, and our local government here in Clark County. We knew the equipment that we needed. We implemented exactly what we could according to the budget, and we got ourselves in a good position to put us right now in a great position to finish on time. Also, with the special session this summer, they gave us additional days to count. That was critical to us being in the position that we're in right now. Had they not given us days prior to Election Day and an extension, we wouldn't be where we are right now. So legislators, all of the political figures here in Nevada did a great job of listening to election officials and us telling them this is what we need in order for us to properly process ballots. So that's where I feel we stand.
Thank you. I just have one quick follow-up for you. What is your reaction to the projections from multiple news organizations that Joe Biden is the president-elect?
I don't really have any reaction. We've got our work to do here. We can't stop what we're doing. I feel good for those election administrators who, where the call goes in, you obviously feel good, but that call has not been made for Nevada, so we're still working as hard as we can to get things completed. So thank you for those questions. Next.
I'm sorry to ask you more questions about numbers, but do you have the partisan breakdown on the 34,743 drop-off mail ballots? Sorry, can I ask?
Oh, I see what you're saying. From the election day drop-off.
From the election, do we know how many were Democrats
I
and how
don't
many
have
Republicans?
those broken down. I have the total breakdown. Well, no, I don't have those broken down.
And then the 44,000 ballots that needed the ID cure,
Okay.
or the ID was needed, was that included in the provisional ballots, or is that a separate universe of ballots?
There are a lot of ballots that are in that
So I can
group.
ask
It
one
could be the online ballots, the mail ballots. So there are different groups that require an ID that didn't provide.
Okay, so they are spread across those ballots.
Sure.
And then yesterday, the Federalist reported that a man who died in 2017, named Fred Stoke Jr., had his ballot returned. Are you or the Secretary of State's office investigating?
I'm not aware of that case, but we certainly will if it's brought to my attention.
And do you compare your voter rolls to the Social Security Death Index?
We have several reports that come through from several entities to clean up our voter rolls.
Hi. Hi, thank you
Hi.
for taking these questions. You had mentioned additional equipment and staffing capabilities that were aided you from the state and the locality. Can you talk a little bit more about when you got that additional capacity and what it looks like?
Well, starting in March, when we became aware of us being, having the need to send out mail ballots to all voters as directed by the Secretary of State, we immediately began work in contacting our vendor or a proposed vendor for our mail ballot processing machine, which has made a huge impact on our ability to count ballots. So the Agilis machine came in. Obviously, it took some time to get it delivered and get it implemented. We used it in the primary election. We continue to use it now for the general election. We immediately, well, the in-person voting in the primary was very different than what we provided for the general. There was only one early voting site and 3 election day sites. But moving to the general, immediately in June, we started working with risk management to develop a plan on exactly what we do to set up sites so they were safe for voters and our workers. And there was an increase in funding to us because we needed to buy shields to protect the voter from the clerk. We needed to buy PPE. We needed to buy cleanser. Another outstanding group who has supported us, the MAC, our fire chief here, Steinbeck, has done an excellent job of not only serving the election department, but the entire county with what we needed for PPE. So that was a big scale up. And then, of course, the personnel. My staff did an excellent job of identifying personnel that we would need in every area so that we could increase that. We got an increase in funding. We used a much larger amount of agency temporary employees because we were unable to hire what we needed through our normal process because in the past a lot of our workers are senior citizens and they love doing that work and they do an excellent job of doing it, but they're more susceptible to the pandemic. So God bless them, they just weren't comfortable coming and working in large groups. So I think those were areas where we got the resources that we definitely needed. Complete support from the state, the feds, and local government.
Great. And how many people are counting at a time right now? And is that different than how many people were counting at a time on Tuesday or Wednesday?
That's a difficult question for me to answer right now. It's a large number of people that are working to count. In all of the processes, I know we're well over 200 people that are working to get everything finished up, and we are on schedule. We will definitely finish on time.
Hey Joe Bartels, 13 Action News here in Las Vegas. You've been asked several times, we'll ask again, have you had any nefarious, any illegitimate voting, any voter fraud known to you, your office, up to this point now?
Up to this point, especially since we began broadcasting these news briefings, we do have some reports that have come in that we're logging, we're reporting, and we're definitely going to do an investigation, and we'll deal with them once the canvass is finished. The votes are in the system at this point, so we'll have to, after the election, post-election, go after anything that's been reported at this time.
Hi, I've been talking to a lot of the voters who are concerned about the integrity of the results. One of the things that they're referencing is something that happened in Michigan with the voting system that you use here with Dominion voting systems. The error there had to do with human error combined with software not being updated correctly and tabulations changing based off of that. So, one, can you confirm that your software systems that you're using here have been fully updated and match with what the Secretary of State has? And second, what do you have to say other than that about people concerned about that software system?
Let me open up in my response on that and saying I'm not certain what Michigan uses. Just because we have the same vendor doesn't guarantee that we're using the same voting equipment or tabulation system. But as far as Clark County and what we've done, we're statutorily required, I should say, to verify the hash code on our software, to verify the hash code on all of our systems, and everything here has been verified to match the certification codes that are provided by NIST for the hash code and what the Secretary of State has instructed us to do. In addition to that, statutorily here, we have to create a certification board that's made up of a bipartisan group of citizens from the public that have an opportunity to participate in our process to ensure that the votes are being correctly counted. And there's 3 stages of that. There's one that happens right before early voting starts, one that happens right before Election Day, and then there's a post-certification activity after the election. And in all three cases, our software came out spotless. So we give them a predetermined total on what we expect the vote turnout to be on our system, and then we read test ballots into the system, and they go through and verify that the counts match. So that's part of what the state requires. All of our equipment here in the Clark County is federally certified for use on the voting machine side, as well as the tabulation software. So we've done everything correctly. We're now performing our post-election audits, where we have to again certify the software on our voting machines and also on the voter verified paper trails, confirm that those are counting correctly. So we do a multitude of things here to verify that the system is correctly working and that everything is certified. But I can't answer your question in comparison to Michigan. I don't know what they run. Next question, any more? I want to thank all of you for your participation. I kind of wish I had done this yesterday when the group was larger. It's a very difficult job we're trying to do, and I appreciate what you guys are doing for the community and asking these tough questions, although it raises my blood pressure tremendously. I do the best that I can to be honest with what we're doing to make the public confident that we're doing what we need to do here to uphold the integrity of the process, which is what the Secretary dictates and what we always hold as our #1 objective. So thank you very much and have a good day.